We're up to Perek Lamed Hai in Vayishlach between Chamishi and Shishi. Be'ezus Hashem Yizburach. I'm going to try to do Perek Lamed Hai and Perek Lamed Vov today, so that tomorrow, Friday, we can do Mit Shem the Haftorah. So, Perek Lamed Hai begins after they left Shechem. Shimon and Levi had killed out Shechem. Yaakov had been upset about it because he felt that was they were betraying the trust that the Shechem people had put in them, even though they deserved to be killed, but he didn't want to betray the trust. What did they do with Dinah? They took Dinah. What did they do with Dinah? Some Medrashim say that Shimon married Dinah. The problem is that Shimon was Dinah's brother, both from the father's side and the mother's side. Shimon was a son of Leah. Dinah was also a daughter of Leah. We mentioned Rabbi Yonasan ben Azil that says that there was a switch of embryos, in which case Dinah was really naturally a daughter of Rachel. In that case, he would have been allowed to marry her before Matan Torah, a half-sister. But the Mefarshim say that he took her, he didn't marry her. He gave her a home, he gave her a place, as though she was married to him. Since she never ended up marrying anybody else, so it was called as though Shimon married her, but Shimon never really had any relations with her. So the Torah says that the Rebbeinu Shalom told Yaakov Avini, it's time for you to pay your neder, it's time for you to pay your debt. You promised when you left Eretz Yisrael, you're going to come up if you're Matzlich, and you were Matzlich, Baruch Hashem, go up to Vayishlach and reconnect. So it says Vishev Sham. What does Vishev Sham mean? So the Ramban explains that it means sit there, spend time there, introspect. Before you go to Mokam HaMikdash, you need to connect. You have to connect your mind. You can't just go up to Mokam HaMikdash without preparation. Be there. And Vishev Sham is also a name, it means 7 days. Spend 7 days there, preparing yourself. So they went, they got rid of all their avodah zuras, even though it was not avodah zura. All these avodah zura things and gold and silver that they had taken, the goyim were all mavatalit when they saw that there was no hope, that they were being killed anyway. It was all brutal. But Yaakov did not want to have any benefit whatsoever from Shechem. All of the gold, all of the silver, even the earrings, everything that they had, everything, he said, bury it. The clothing, everything they got rid of. And they toveled themselves, they prepared themselves to go up to Vayishlach. On the way, there was a lot of nations gathered, and they said, we have to do something about these Eden. They just killed out the city of Shechem. Soon they're going to take over the whole land. They knew that there was a bris bein Besurim, that Yaakov and his children are going to take over Eretz Yisrael. I guess they're beginning. So they gathered for a big war, but the Torah says, Vayichitas Elohim, there was a fear of God, and they did not chase the children of Yaakov. So Yaakov came to Liz, to Vayishlach, and he built a mizbeach, and while he was there, before even he got the Neviah from the Rebbeinu Shalom, he got a message that his mother passed away. The Torah says that the Devorah passed away. It's a remes, Chazal say, that he wouldn't have made a havailis for the Devorah, who was a nurse. So it's a remes that his mother, Rivka, passed away. According to the Medrash, the Sefri, at the end of Zayis HaBrucha, and Taisus brings in Yevamos of Samach Aleph, Rivka was 133 at that time. That's based according to the Shitta that she was 14 when she got married to Yitzchak. According to Shitta that she was 3, you have to say that at that point she was only 122. Let's continue. So at that point that she was nifted, there's a very interesting chazal. Why does the Torah not spell it out that Rivka was nifted? Because people should not curse the person who Esav was born. Esav was born from Rivka, and Esav was such a terrible person, they would curse Rivka. The explanation of that medrash is very interesting. And it's mentioned that Ramban discusses it. The explanation is as follows. There's a medrash that really spells it out almost perfectly. When Rivka was nifter, who was there to take care of the levaya? Yitzchak was blind. He could not take care of the levaya. He was old and blind. Avruam was nifter already. Suda was nifter already. Yaakov was not there. He was in Shechem. who would be left? Only Esav. And it would not be bakuvadik for a person like Rivka, such a heilige person like Rivka, that the only person by the Levi should be Esav. The only child by the Levi, the only family member taking care of the Levi should be Esav. So the people that were there, the servants, buried her quietly without telling anybody about it. And that's what it means, that they hid it. So that people shouldn't talk about that Esav is the one who, the Esav, the kind for Rivka, who's the kind for Rivka? Esav. So that's the story. Al Kapunim, after that, the Rebbeinu Shalom was visiting Yankov, and he made Nechem Avayim. And while he was there, he benched him, and he told him, the Malach called you Yisruel, now I'm actually ratifying that thing. Your name is Yisruel. You won over every seduction, over every possible Yetzer Hara. You were successful. You are Yisruel. Yisurisu emelihim. But it's another word also. Yushar ayil. Yidibes glach. You're straight. You're straight with the Eibishter. And that's why the Lushan is in Pashas Hazini, and we mentioned in Davening, is also called Yeshirin, because Yeshirin is Lushan Yusher. It's the Yisruel is Yishruel. It's a Lushan of Yashris. So the Rebbeinu Shalom told them, but even though your name is Yisruel, there still is a part of Yaakov in you. Shemcha Yaakov. Your name is also Yaakov. But Leikuda Shemcha Oid Yaakov shouldn't be called only Yaakov, it's also called Yisruel. The Rebbeinu Shalom gave him now an aviah, which is going to be very important. We'll get up to it soon when we get up to Reuven. The Rebbeinu Shalom told him, Ani Ayil Vayomer Lo Yelihim, Ani Ayil Shaddai, Prai Irvai, have children. Goy Ikahal Goyim Yemimeku, you'll have nations and groups of nations. Imeluchem Mechalotzechi Yaitzayi, and there will be kings will come out of your loins. So the problem is, he didn't have any more children after that. The only child that he had was Binyamin, and Rachel was, to all accounts, seems that she was already pregnant at the time. So what is the Rebbeinu Shalom saying? So the Rebbeinu Shalom was referring to Binyamin, but what's this Goy Ikahal Goyim? So we're going to discuss it a little bit further when we talk about Reuven. The Rebbeinu Shalom told him, promised him then that the land, you're going to get the land of Eretz Yisrael. And then there's amazing pusik vayal my ulav Elohim b'mukam asher diber itoy. The Rebbeinu Shalom raised himself up from him because Yaakov was considered actually the Merkava to the Shechina, as the Lushan of Chazal is. Yaakov was the third foot, was the third leg of the Merkava. The Merkava is where the Eibishter bavasach, where you can actually see the godliness of Hashem. Avruam, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and David were the four legs of the Merkava. So they continued, and then they were on the way. Rachel was nifter. She had a baby, and she died in childbirth. So the Torah says that while she was dying, she was told that you have a child, you have a son. She called him Ben Oini, and Yaakov called him Binyamin. The Lushan Ben Oini, what does that mean? Oini is a illusion of tsar, availis. This is my child of tsar and availis. I'm being nifted by this child. Others say that she was sad because she knew that Eibishter said that Yaakov's going to have more children. So if he's going to have more children, then she wanted to be able to give him more children, and that's why she was sad about it. But she called him Ben Oini, but Yaakov called him Binyamin. Oin has another meaning. Koichi v'raishas oini, my strength. Yaakov called him Ben Yumin, my right hand, the child of my right hand. In other words, my strength. And that's the meaning of the word Ben Yumin, according to the Rambam. According to Rashi, Ben Yumin means the only child who was born in Eretz Yisrael. Yamin is the right, which is Eretz Yisrael. The Torah continues that at that point, they were very close to Ephras. They were not far from Ephras, and which is by Slechem, and that's where Yaakov made a matzayva, and he made Kaiver Rochel. The Ramban says a very, very interesting Ramban, and you see the beauty and the anivus of the Ramban. Ramban says he worked out through the Psikim, before he lived in Eretz Yisrael, he worked out through the Psikim, and he came to a conclusion that Rochel is buried in Rumah. Like it says, Kol berumu nishmu, nihi bechisam rirem, a big cry, Rochel's crying, Rochel mavakal b'neu. So he assumed that Rachel was nifted, it was buried in Rumu. And he had another explanation also because it says Begvil Binyamin Betzaltzach, and in Sefer Shmuel. And Rachel and Tzaltzach in Rumu are all in the Gvil of Binyamin over there. Vayishlach is also within Binyamin. But the Ramban understood that it was in the north of Binyamin, and this is the south of Binyamin. Zokt the Ramban, when I came to Yisrael, I found the Kaiver Ruchel in a different place. And they have a Messiah, he says, going back till the Zman of the Beis HaMikdash. So evidently, this is the place. And he goes and he says, I was wrong, and he figures out the meaning of the psikim based upon the new information that he has. This is the beauty of the Ramban, is that he was able to admit, I see that I was wrong. So he says, why did, everybody asks the question, why did Yaakov not take Rachel to the Munas HaMachpelah? And Rashi tells a famous medrash that when the Yidden leave Eretz Yisrael, they're going to need to they're going to need a place to daven, and they'll be able to pass by Kaiver Ruchel, and they're going to daven there. And Ruchel gets chosbeten by the Kisei HaKoved for the Yidden. The Ramban adds a small piece. He says Yaakov didn't want to bury Ruchel in Munas HaMachpelah because Munas HaMachpelah is in the Chaylik of Yehuda, which is from the children of Leah. Therefore, it's more appropriate for Leah to be buried there. And Ruchel is buried in the Chaylik of Binyamin, which is her child. And it's more appropriate for her to be buried there. It's appropriate for a person to be buried in their mukam of their Yerusha. Now comes the scary story of vi-vii. The Pusik says, Vayihi b'shkoin Yisroel b'uretzahi, vayilach vi-vii vayishkav es bilhu, pilegish uvev, vayishma Yisroel, vayiv v'nayankev shnaim usa. And this Pusik has a psik in the middle in the Torah. There's a space, but it's considered one Pusik. What happened over here? The pashtus of the Pusik is that Reuven had relations with Bilhah, who was his father's concubine. It's not direct Isser because they were not married. She was only a concubine, but she was only Pelegish. But it's still very daunting to think that Reuven would do such a thing. So that's, some of Hashem say that's what happened. The Gemara in Shabbos Tafni and Hayim Bayis discusses it, and most of the Shittas say that Reuven did not do that. What did he do? We'll see. What would be the reason for him to do it, though, was that he, or even if he didn't, what's the reason that he made an issue over here? Either he took Yaakov's bed out, or he did something else. Why did he get involved? Because after Rachel, Yaakov was always with Rachel. Rachel was the main wife. Leah was, she had more children, and she was a very important person. But Rachel was the main wife. That's the person who Yaakov was his bashet. And Leah came in, and Baruch Hashem, because we have Levi, Yehuda, all the Kehanim, Leviim, David HaMelech, all from Leah. But Lamasa, Rachel was the main wife. After Rachel was nefter, Yaakov said, okay, I'm going to continue with Bilhah, who was Rachel's maidservant, and continue as though she's the main wife. And that disturbed Reuven very much. How could she's not even a wife, she's only Pelegish, and she's going to be more important, more valuable than my mother. He couldn't handle that. And therefore, either he slept with her in order to be metama her, because once Reuven sleeps with her, Yaakov would not continue with her, or he did it in order, or he just moved the bed out, or, as we'll see, very interesting pshat, Rabbi Gamliel said in the Gemara, that he davened to Hashem, and he said, please Hashem, put into the mind of my father that he should not hurt my mother like that. Now, what was Yaakov's cheshbon? Because the Rebbeinu Shalom told him, as we said before, you have to have more children. You'll have nations, and groups of nations are going to come out of you. And that has to mean more than just Binyamin. So it has to mean that Yaakov is going to have more children. Now, if he's going to have more children, it cannot be from Leah, because Leah, it can't be, according to the Cheshbonis that we know in Chazal, can't be that one of the wives should have more than half, more than 50% of Klal Yisrael. Leah would have more than 6 children. She would have 7 or 8 children, while the rest of all the wives together only have another 6. So it would have to be from somebody else, and Yaakov understood that this is going to be from Ruchel, but then since Ruchel was nifter, he assumed that it has to be from Bilhah. And that's why he wanted to have more children from Bilhah, and that's why he wanted to continue, and that's why he moved his official abode into the tent of Bilhah. But it even knew from Leah, which had the Aryeh HaKodesh, there's only going to be 12 Shvutim. So he said, why is my father going to Bilhah? Only just for the memory of Ruchel. That's embarrassing to my mother, and he couldn't accept that. He was not privy to the fact that the Rebbeinu Shloim wanted Yaakov to have more children. According to Ram Gamliel, Hashem is very good. He davened, he said, please Hashem, don't let it be an embarrassment to my mother. And in that case, the Rebbeinu Shloim, who always sees when somebody is hurt and somebody is embarrassed, the Rebbeinu Shloim always is ma'oided and novim Hashem, and he took care of it, and he actually did that. He put into the mind of Yaakov to go with Leah, but Leah couldn't have any more children, and therefore, how do you makayim goy kahal goyim? Through the 2 children, Ephraim and Menashe, Kirivim Rishim Yili. So Ephraim and Menashe are considered Shvutim, and that's considered as though kahal goyim. And that's why it says in the Sefer Divrei Hayomim that after Reuven did this, Yaakov could not make Reuven have 2 Shvutim, because then it would be Mamish Choyte Niske, like he's doing it for himself. So he went and he gave to B'nai Ruchel, who Ruchel and Bilhah were supposed to have the extra Shvutim, so therefore he made Ephraim and Menashe through this. That's a very, very interesting shot and a deep insight into what really happened over here with Reuven and Bilhah. The Torah says that Yitzchak, at this point Yitzchak was nifter at 180 years old, Zukin is Vayomim, and Esav did not give Yaakov covet. He could still consider himself the older one. He considered himself the important one over there, and Esav and Yaakov both buried him. But we'll see later that Esav eventually lost his position. Now we have Perek Lamed Vov, and we're not going to say a long arichas on Perek Lamed Vov. It's a very interesting Perek, but the main point of this Perek is the children of Esav, the Einiklach of Esav, and Azevate. And the Torah explains how they were all, there was so much incest and so much znis that happened over there, that's mamash beyond comprehension. So we'll just mention some of them. So there was one of the Alifai HaChoyri, whose name was Tzivoin. He was mezana with his mother. And the child that was born, name was Anu. Tzivoin liked Anu very much because it was both his brother and his son. When Anna got married, Tzivoin was mezana with the wife of Anu. And the girl that was born, name was Ahalivumu. This Ahalivumu was a double mamzer, and Esav liked her nature. Mamzer has a very promiscuous nature, and that grabbed Esav, so he married her, and she called herself Yehudis, in order to make Yitzchak and Rivka think that she's very from Yehudi. She's against Avodah Zarah. Meanwhile, Esav had already had a child, Eliphaz. This Eliphaz went and he was mezana with Ahalivumu, who was his father's wife. And now we have a triple mamzer who was born, which was Koirach. His name, no relation to the Koirach that's later in Sefer Bamidbar. This Eliphaz went on, and he went to Tzivoin, and he was mezana with the wife of Tzivoin, and he had a daughter from her who was Timnah. Eliphaz liked Timnah, so eventually he married her, who was actually his daughter, and Amulek was born from that. So now we know how Amulek was mamzer, and why he was such a wild and chitzpahdik person. The Torah finishes off with Aleph Magdiel, Aleph Iram. What's Magdiel? Rashi says Magdiel is Rome. The Ramban explains that with the Torah is not telling us the whole story until Rome, but the pshat is that Masa of a Simulabunim, everything that says in this parsha is in order to show what's going to be later. And eventually, Magdiel is Magdil Ail. And by Rome it says in Sefer Daniel, Va'al Ailim Yisgadol. He makes himself bigger, greater even than the Rebbeinu Shalom Kiviyuchel. And as we'll see later in the Haftarah, that they'll be knocked down from there. The important pusik in this whole parak is Vayishlach el Eretz Pnei Yaakov Uchev. Even though Isaac considered himself bigger and better and more chushev and everything, at the end of the day, when Yaakov came to Eretz Yisrael and Isaac realized that Yaakov is really the one, he picked himself up and he left. Masav Labunim, that's the way it is always, even though the Goyim push over to try to lord it over the Yidden, and they have 7 kings before the Yidden, at the end of the day, the Yidden are the one that are matzliach. He who laughs last, laughs best.